السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, tonight we'll continue with الروض المربع, and at the end inshallah ta'ala I'll mention something about the night of the 15th of Sha'ban, just briefly because many brothers had asked. So briefly inshallah ta'ala we'll talk about it at the end inshallah, and if I forgot, remind me inshallah. Barakallah fikum. So, going through Bab al-Ghusl, still in Bab al-Ghusl, and we stopped at the statement that says والثاني وتغييب حشفة أصلية. So we only took the first one, the first mujib min mujibat al-Ghusl. So going back to the matn of Zad, where it's in red here, where we're supposed to memorize it inshallah, when he said باب الغسل وموجبه خروج المني دفقا بلذة لا بدونهما من غير نائم، وإن انتقل ولم يخرج اغتسل له، فإن خرج بعده لم يعده. And we talked about that last time. Then he continues by saying والثاني. So الثاني, the second mujib, the second thing that makes the ghusl wajib, mandatory upon a person, is, as he says, تغييب حشفة أصلية. I'm going to read the red first, inshallah, the Zad al-Mustaqni. He says وتغييب حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي قبلا كان أو دبرا ولو من بهيمة أو ميت. So this is the second one. And again, as mentioned last time, there's no haya fi deen, there's no shyness when it comes to making the matters of the deen clear, especially with these matters of tahara, because there are certain rulings that applies and salah is affected, which is the second pillar of al-Islam, and everyone should learn these types of rulings. That's one thing. The second thing is very important when we look at these books and mutun, and I mentioned this before, but just to make sure that we remember this point, when the ulama in the shuruh or in the explanations, they make tafri' or branches to the masail, and they mention many masail. One of the reasons for that is not that they're being extreme or making up things that does not exist. One of the wisdom behind it is to make sure that the student, they understand the principle very well. So and sometimes or many times it would mention even things that are haram or things that might not be even perceived to happen or rarely to happen, or someone that might be so evil doing such an act. It is not approving it, right? So only the ones with weak in their intellect, they would think that this is something that is approved in the deen. No, it's just referring to the subject or to the mas'ala to make it very clear when mentioning some of these different situations, and its reality among some of the evil ones, or those who are having all kinds of abnormalities in them. So just to make sure that this is clear when we talk about these matters, inshallah, is to bring the meaning very clear. So this second one, that من موجبات الغسل تغييب حشفة أصلية. تغييب from غاب يغيب, and the word غيبة, if it's something that sounds familiar, which means to have something absent. So التغييب, this is the actual act of making something absent or disappearing. So تغييب حشفة, when الحشفة is the glands of the private part, of the male private part. So تغيب, that means when it disappears. أصلية, that means original, because there is other things that's going to be mentioned. So this is with regards to the intimate relations. So if al-hashafa, and this is what it's very precise, because there's a hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام with إذا التقى الختانان. And al-khitanan, as the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام means if the two circumcised parts met, then فقد وجب الغسل. Ghusl is obligatory. So ghusl becomes mandatory either if the glands, which is al-khitan, the place of circumcision. This makes it very clear. So the place of circumcision in a man, if it disappears in the private organ of the female, then the ghusl becomes obligatory. This is one thing, regardless whether there was inzal or not. Inzal meaning if something comes out, ejaculation, versus if there was ejaculation without taghyib, without the actual act, that also necessitates the ghusl. So this is basically what's going to mention here, and of course the precise words here to make sure that with the different, again, circumstances that we'll go through it inshallah to make sure that it's clear. And sometimes it's uncomfortable when you translate it, because in Arabic it doesn't give that sometimes the explicit nature to it, but it's very clear. So تغيب حشفة أصلية. So التغيب, when it disappears, when it goes in, al-hashafa is the gland, is the place of al-khitan, or the circumcised part. أصلية, that means original. That means there's something else that is not original. أو قدرها, or قدرها. In the sharh here he says, or what in place of it, or the measure of it. Al-qadr is the measure. In fuqidat, if it's missed, that means if that happened, again, as we said, it might be sounds very rare to happen, but if there's no hashafa, if there's no glands, or it's if it's not there, so the same measure of it, the same like of it disappeared, meaning was inserted, then also the same ruling apply. So that no one would think that it has to have the hashafa or the glands. وَإِن لَمْ يُنزِلْ, even if he does not, anything comes down, meaning when it comes to the excretion or the ejaculation. He says في فرج أصلي. So حشفة أصلية, that means it's original. In فرج أصلي, in an original or farj, which is the private part. So it has to be أصلي. قبلا كان أو دبرا. قبلا is the front, or the dubur, the rear, whether it's the front or the rear. So whether it's halal or haram, we're not talking about halal and haram. It's all about what makes the ghusl mandatory. Someone committed the worst sin ever. He's an evil person, right? But still, with the subject of al-ghusl, right? That means the ghusl is mandatory upon him. He says, وَإِن لَمْ يَجِدْ حَرَارَةً. So just the fact that it's taghyib, this is what's sufficient for the ghusl to be obligatory, even if he does not find yajid. Harara is the warmth. So it's not about the desire. It's about the actual insertion that makes it obligatory for the ghusl. So therefore, as a result of this, if it's only touched the outside, that does not make the ghusl mandatory. If there is inzal period, if there is always inzal, again, we don't have to repeat it over and over again, assuming that everybody is paying attention, inshallah. So if there's no excretion, if there's no ejaculation, if there's ejaculation, then it doesn't matter whether there's insertion or not. It doesn't matter. This makes of course, the ghusl obligatory. But here, with regards to التغييب, تغييب حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي قبلا كان أو دبرا, even if it's not for the desires or the warmth, it doesn't matter. That makes the ghusl, we're talking about the ghusl here, becomes wajib, becomes obligatory. What's the significance, or why they mention asli and asliya and things like this? He says, فَإِنْ أَوْلَجَ. Al-ilaj is insertion or entering somewhere, as the hadith إِذَا وَلَجَ, meaning entering the house. So فَإِنْ أَوْلَجَ الْخُنْثَ الْمُشْكِلِ. Al-khuntha al-mushkil is the hermaphrodites. Al-mushkil, the one that is not sure whether he mushkil, that means it's problematic, but it refers to is not known really whether he is male or female. That means he has both organs, having both organs of male and female. So this is where it shows to clarify what is meaning of حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي. So al-khuntha, he has both organs. So إذا أولج الخنثى حشفته. Al-hashafa is the male organ, is the tip of the male organ. So if he inserted this في فرج أصلي, in a farj that is asli, not someone that is hermaphrodite, someone that is normal. ولم ينزل, and nothing was ejaculated. أو, or, the two cases here would have the same hukm, the same ruling, to make this first one clear. أو أولج, the same thing, or inserted غير الخنثى, غير الخنثى, so not خنثى. That means a normal person, ذكره, that means a male, he inserted في قبل الخنثى. He inserted in the qubul, the front of al-khuntha is the hermaphrodite. In both cases, فَلَا غُسْلَ عَلَى وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا. There's no ghusl on neither of them. Both of them, there's no ghusl mandatory for them. إِلَّا أَن يُنزِلْ, unless there was inzal, unless there was ejaculation. So how does this get understood? Because it's not farj asli, or hashafa asli, right? So here you have the asli, the normal one, was inserted in a non-asli, so we're not sure. So that's why there's no ghusl mandatory here. So the two cases are very clear. It does not make the ghusl mandatory. What's the purpose of that? It's because it is not something that can apply the hadith إذا التقى الختانان. Al-khitanan, the two circumcised organs. For the khuntha al-mushkil, the hermaphrodite one, it is not khitanan. It's not the original. That means there's no circumcision there. And it doesn't mean that if they're not circumcised, there's no ghusl. No, it's the al-khitanan or al-khitan. It's not about a person being circumcised or not. It's about the organ itself. To use an unexplicit way to explain the matter. I hope also this is clear. So he says ولا غسل, and no غسل also إذا مس الختان الختانة, if the khitan touched al-khitan. So the two circumcised organs touched each other, just touch, no غسل. من غير إلاج, إلاج is أولج, without إلاج, without insertion. ولا بإلاج, ولا بإلاج بعض الحشفة, and also there's no غسل ولا بإلاج, by the insertion of some of the حشفة, some of the glands. Has to be the entire glands, which is the place of the circumcision. So this is how to explain, and with regards to al-hashafa al-asliya fi farjin asli, and that's why he mentioned asliya and asliya here. Whether it's qubul or dubur, and in dubur, of course, it's haram, but it's just to make the ruling clear. It's about the disappearance of al-hashafa and not part of it in farjin asli. So hopefully this is clear, inshallah. Then he says, so both, again, I'm just pointing this again, asli, asli. It has to be both asli. If it's not the same, if one asli and one is not asli, that means there's no ghusl mandatory here, because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Then he says, وَلَوْ, since the matn says, وَلَوْ مِن بَهِيمَةٍ أَوْ مَيْتٍ, وَلَوْ, even if, to make the ruling very clear, it's about al-ilaj, it's about the insertion, about the disappearance. So even لو كان الفرج, if the farj, if the private organ, من بهيمة, from an animal, from a cattle, أو ميت, or dead, أو نائم, or someone that is asleep, أو مجنون, or someone that is insane. And the نائم and the مجنون, they're not responsible for their actions. أو صغير يجامع مثله, or صغير, young, but the like of that young, يجامع, that means it's valid to have relations with. All of that, it's about the insertion that makes the ghusl mandatory. وكذا, also the like, لو استدخلت ذكر نائم, لو استدخلت, if this is feminine, if she inserted ذكر نائم, the ذكر, the male organ of a sleeping one, أو صغير, or someone young, ونحوه, and the like of this. So this is all to explain that التغيب, it's about التغيب regardless what the تغيب is, as long as it حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي. So this is the second موجب من موجبات الغسل is التغيب. Because the first one was al-inzal, was the seminal fluid being ejaculated. The second one is تغيب حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي. The third one, والثالث إسلام كافر, the Islam of a disbeliever. إسلام كافر. So here in the sharh he says أصليا. Also the word أصليا is mentioned. That means the kafir is asli. That means he's never been a Muslim before. So that means there is a kafir that is not asli. Yes. أو مرتدا, because the murtad, that means he was a Muslim. He irtad, he became a kafir, and then he came back to be a Muslim. So the fact that he comes back to the deen of al-Islam, then he has to take ghusl. He has to make ghusl. ولو مميزا, even if he is mumayyiz. Al-mumayyiz is the child that did not reach the age of puberty yet, but mumayyiz, but he's able to see what is right and what is wrong, 7 years old and above. So that means if someone 8 years old, 10 years old became a Muslim, then also to make ghusl. وإسلام كافر أصليا كان أو مرتدا. Or أو لم يوجد في كفره ما يوجبه. Or it did not, there was no presence in his kufr, in his state of kufr, what makes ghusl wajib, ما يوجبه. Meaning, what does that mean? The al-ghusl for the kafir is not because he probably was in state of janaba, because he did not apply the rulings of al-ghusl. So that means he's more likely to be in state of janaba. That's why we're asking him to make ghusl. No, it doesn't. It's not because of that. It's because the fact that he became a Muslim. So that's what awlam yud, because some people they say because he's more likely he was in state of janaba, he was supposed to take a shower if he was a Muslim and he didn't. So that's why he is to take a shower. No, this is not the illah, this is not the reason behind it. So it's the reason behind it is that he became a Muslim. أو لم يوجد في كفره ما يوجبه. So, or there was nothing in his kufr ما يوجبه. That means he was not in state of janaba. So this is also applies. The evidence, he says, لأن قيس بن عاصم أسلم. قيس بن عاصم, he made Islam, he became a Muslim. فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يغتسل بماء وسدر. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام ordered him to make ghusl with water and sidr. And sidr is like you would use soap or the like of this. رواه أحمد والترمذي وحسنه. So before we continue with this is Islam al-Kafir. According to what we read here, this is mandatory. There's another riwayah in Madhab Imam Ahmad that it's not mandatory, it's not obligatory. And the evidence of that is that many of the Sahaba, they became Muslims, and the Futuhat, they went all over the place and people entered into the fold of Islam, and there's no mention of people being commanded after they become Muslims to everybody needs to make ghusl, everybody take a shower. So, and then they would explain this hadith of Qais ibn Asim as this is in the category of mustahab, in the category of what's recommended. So, of course, to be on the safe side and to say that to the kafir when he becomes a Muslim, but not to, and this is where the significance of knowing these two types of opinions is not to delay the Islam of the kafir till he takes a shower, as some people out of ignorance, they do that, right? So someone wants to be a Muslim. Should you say to him, go take a shower first and come back? No, never say that. Or if he dies before he became, or he said his shahada. He says his shahada, and he even, once he says the shahada, he makes wudu sufficient. If it's time for the salah, it's sufficient to make wudu and to make salah. And then he is to be told, you're going to take a shower, so take a shower. And it doesn't have to be immediately, or you have to take him immediately to take a shower, but to remind them of this, and this is something that the Prophet ﷺ said to one of the companions to do so. But that does not prevent him from being a Muslim or delays his Islam, right? So according to that opinion, so Islamu kafirin. Then ويستحب له, now ويستحب, it's recommended for who, له الكافر that became a Muslim. إلقاء شعره. إلقاء شعره, that means to remove his hair. قال أحمد ويغسل ثيابه, and he washes his ثياب or his garment, to wash his clothing. Does that mean that the kafir, his ثياب is najis? No. It's not. This is all, if it was najis, then it would become mandatory, but it's not najis. So this is only in the categories of al-istihbab. And there's not necessarily clear evidence with regards to this matter, but this is in the categories of al-istihbab, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. As يستحب له إلقاء شعره. And of course, in the madhab, istihbab here, it doesn't have to be with an evidence. Sometimes it's that's why we said there's difference between saying ويستحب versus that it's ويسن. Right? When they say yusannu, that means this is from the sunnah, that means there's evidence to it. But when they say yustahabbu, the matter is much broader. It doesn't have to be necessarily with a specific evidence. It's something that can fit into the general rulings of the hadith and the knowing from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, like cleaning oneself and things of that nature. So this is basically how it should be described in this matter. So that's why, and there is actually the hadith with this, is with ilqa al-sha'r, is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the man, alqi anka sha'r al-kufr, remove from yourself the hair of the disbelief, wakhtatin, and make circumcision. And the same thing with the circumcision. The circumcision can be something that is very painful. So it's something that a person becomes a Muslim to make khitan. Is it mandatory upon him? The same thing as the shower or the ghusl. There's no evidence other than that statement of the Prophet ﷺ that the people were commanded to do circumcision in masses when they became Muslims. So that's why those who said this was in the categories of al-istihbab, or something that is recommended and not something that is obligatory. So this is and it gives the as some even explained with regards to the hair, whether it's for the cleanliness. And this is not necessarily something that is obligatory, or maybe as some described it, that he was having his hair in a way that the people of Jahiliyyah, they have special way of having their hair as a way of ta'zim. Sometimes they would knot their hair in a way that has some beliefs behind it or something like this. So that's why it's not a mandatory thing, and it's different from one person to the other. And some had mentioned some of the ilal with regards to this hadith anyway, that I just mentioned. So that's why if the hadith is weak, so they said وَيُسْتَحَبُّ for that reason, because of that. And the same thing with washing, وَيَغْسِلُ ثِيَابَهُ, and to wash his garments. Let's take the fourth one and we stop here inshallah, and then we'll talk about the subject that we mentioned earlier. والرابع موت أو موت غير شهيد المعركة أو غير شهيد معركة. Right? موت, death. If a person is dead, of course ghusl is mandatory, but it's mandatory for those who are alive to make ghusl for the one that died. But there's exception. غير شهيد معركة, not someone that was shaheed in the ma'raka. If he's martyr in the ma'raka, in the battlefield, there's no ghusl for the shaheed in the battlefield. And he mentioned ma'raka here to make sure that it's not the other types of shuhada, because as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the shuhada of ummati ma ta'udduna shahid. Who do you count as the shaheed in my ummah? They said the one in the ma'raka, in the battlefield. He said, then there are very few. But the shuhada in the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, al-mabtun shaheed, wal-ghariq shaheed, wa-sahibul hadmi shaheed, the one that dies because of a disease in his stomach or in his inside, he's shaheed. The drowning person is shaheed. The one that dies burning, he is shaheed, and so on. And a building collapses on him, shaheed. But these shuhada, they are to be washed and they are to be buried in the normal way, because they're not shuhada al-ma'raka. Only the ones that died in the battlefield, the Prophet ﷺ would command for them to be buried without giving them shower, and with their clothing without kafan. And it's not because of the convenience, because the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the reason for that is because they be resurrected in the day of judgment with their blood gushing. The smell, the color of it is the color of blood, and the smell of it is the smell of musk. So the taghsil here is not for the shaheed al-ma'raka. وَمَقْتُولٍ ظُلْمًا. Here, al-maqtul, someone that is killed, ظُلْمًا, in an unjust way. وَيَأْتي, that means this will be mentioned later, the ruling of this. And this will be mentioned in the kitab, in the chapter of al-janaiz, in the chapter of janaza and funeral. But according to the madhab, both are not to be washed, not to be given ghusl. But that will be mentioned in details, inshallah. So we'll respect what's mentioned in the book. So if someone asks, we'll discuss it later, inshallah ta'ala, with the maqtul, dhulman, and how's that defined. And of course, there's difference of opinions in the matter. So we'll stop here, inshallah. So we stopped by the fourth mujib min mujibat al-ghusl. I read one more time to see if there's any questions later, inshallah. And the questions will be after I talk briefly, inshallah ta'ala, about the subject of tonight. So he says here, والثاني تغييب حشفة أصلية أو قدرها إن فقدت وإن لم ينزل في فرج أصلي قبلا كان أو دبرا وإن لم يجد حرارة. فإن أولج الخنثى المشكل حشفته في فرج أصلي ولم ينزل، أو أولج غير الخنثى ذكره في قبل الخنثى، فلا غسل على واحد منهما إلا أن ينزل، ولا غسل إذا مس الختان الختان من غير إيلاج ولا بإيلاج بعض الحشفة، ولو كان الفرج من بهيمة أو ميت أو نائم أو مجنون أو صغير يجامع مثله، وكذا لو استدخلت ذكر نائم أو صغير ونحوه. والثالث إسلام كافر أصليا كان أو مرتدا، ولو مميزا أو لم يوجد في كفره ما يوجبه، لأن قيس بن عاصم أسلم فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يغتسل بماء وسدر. رواه أحمد والترمذي وحسنه. ويستحب له إلقاء شعره، قال أحمد، ويغسل ثيابه. والرابع موت غير شهيد معركة ومقتول ظلما ويأتي. So hopefully this is clear, inshallah. طب let me see if you have any questions with regards to what we read for only, inshallah. Not only in the subject, so make sure that we finish that part. And the attendance code is تغيب, inshallah. So if you have any questions with what we covered only, so we understand from the hadith, إذا التقى الختانان, that it's not just the touching of the private parts, but the insertion of one into the other. Yes, because al-khitan is not the tip of it, it's the gland. No, glands. أحسنت. Sheikh, if one is, I'm not Sheikh, but anyway, if one is in the state of janaba, if one is in state of janaba and oiled his hair to the roots before that, is his ghusl valid without removing the oil with soap? Shampoo first. Can we wash it whilst doing ghusl? The oil does not prevent the water from reaching the hair and the roots and so on. If there is a material that a person has on his head or in his body that prevents the reach of the water, then that should be removed. But the oil is something that does not prevent it, so it doesn't have to be removed. And as long as a person wash the proper way and waters his hair very well, then there's no harm, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. Can you repeat what is done with the martyr in the battlefield again? Also, the martyr, if he dies in the battlefield, no ghusl on him. Prophet ﷺ ordered for the martyrs to be buried with their clothing without being washed. And this is only in the battlefield. Not the shaheed as a result of drowning or burning or anything like this. Only the shaheed in the battlefield. Also, ghusl for the one who accepted Islam is recommended and not obligatory, according to the other opinion and the majority upon that. And he is to be advised. But if it's an obligation, that means go do it now, things like this, no. Unless something is very strange. Someone, his hair, he has some satanic worship rituals with his hair. I mean, something strange like this. This is the hair, I'm sorry. But I'm talking about the ghusl, no. It's recommended, wallahu a'lam, and this is another riwayah in the madhab. What is قدرها إن فقدت؟ نعم. قدرها is since الختان or the place of the circumcision or الحشفة, if it's inserted and disappeared, that makes the ghusl wajib. What if there's no حشفة? Then this is قدرها, the like of it, the like portion of it. If it's missed, if it's not present, in case if that happened, if it's not there, it's missing, it's cut off, whatever, then the same measure. What's the definition of marika? Is it only between Muslims and non-Muslims, or can it be among Muslims? I'm not sure what is that word. I'm sorry, I'm not able to recognize it. If you can make it clear, inshallah. معركة أو معركة. نعم. نعم. The definition of the معركة is the actual combat. No, people are in combat. There are armies are facing one another. This is basically what it is. ولو مميزا، هل ممكن التوضيح؟ Yes, even if he is not an adult yet, in the age of a tamiz, between 7 and right before the age of puberty. So if a kafir, meaning a child, he became a Muslim, also the child is to be told to take a shower. Basically, that's what it says. But a child less than 7 years old, he's not recognizing what he's doing. But someone that is mumayyiz, he knows what he's doing. He knows that he's becoming a Muslim. He's saying the shahada. Should ghusl be done immediately? As we said, no, it doesn't have to be. Before sleeping, it's recommended, but even if he doesn't make the ghusl, there's no harm. No. صغير يجامع مثله. A صغير is the young one that the like of which can sustain al-jima' or the relations. Yeah, because the relations doesn't have to be valid to happen. Again, they're talking here about the insertion itself. So sometimes there is insertion even if they are less than the age of puberty. So يجامع مثله, the like of which is have جماع. طيب battles can happen among Muslims at times, especially in history, and other times against non-Muslims. How is shaheed known to us? Can happen among Muslims. No, among the Muslims, there's no, they are to be washed. But other times against non-Muslims. نعم, the معركة, the normal combat. نعم. No. We don't say a shaheed. We don't consider them shaheed. We don't say shaheed. We say we hope for them. That's the ruling what the Prophet ﷺ said. طيب, بارك الله فيكم. If we don't mind, we'll, uh, anything else, inshallah. طيب, بارك الله فيكم. I took too much of your time. We'll stop here, inshallah, and we continue, inshallah ta'ala, next time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us witness the month of Ramadan and guide us and help us to do what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times, inshallah. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.